All right. Parashat, Avner? Matot,
Masay.
Masay. Very good. Last few weeks, we were talking about lessons, because usually we try to talk in the parasha about something that we could learn and apply to our lives from the parasha. In the last few weeks, we were concentrating on, call it leadership style or leadership lessons. But leadership doesn't really mean for a CEO of a company. It doesn't really mean for a rabbi of the shul. It means to everybody, because each and every one of us, at a certain point or part of our lives, becomes a leader, and that means something that we need to learn. The lesson that I want to talk to you about this week has to do, I think, also beyond just pure leadership lessons that we could learn. It has to do, I guess, also with civil duties and the obligation that we have to give tochecha or to rebuke someone. And that's the shiur that Moshe is trying to teach us, is maybe on the prohibition for us to close our eyes and not to say what needs to be said when we see a person, a group of people disobeying values or not caring or taking lightly, for example, their work or social virtues. But then, of course, the lesson on the other hand is how to do so appropriately. I mean, sometimes, you've seen it, sometimes I would tell somebody, well, what you're doing your work is really wrong. You might say to me, with all the respect, Rabbi, what is it your business? He's not working for you. Well, what is it your business to tell him that he's doing wrong? Well, of course, it is not my business as a rabbi, but it is my business as a Jew to tell another Jew what he's doing is wrong. For example, if they're paying you to do a job, they're not paying you to sleep. If they're paying you to do your job. If you get paid to do a certain task, you need to make sure you do it. Because if not, you're gazlan. The Gemara tells us, there's a whole section, Masechet Brachot, how the workers need to fulfill their obligation to Shamayim by saying Kriyat Shema on time without taking away time from their employer that is paying them to do their work. So therefore it is our business to do so. And we need to make sure, this is not just for that, this is for there's something wrong with this behavior, and we need to take responsibility for such things. We need to feel responsible, and we need to assume that responsibility. And the meaning of taking this responsibility is also, and many times, to stand in uncomfortable situations. But really, along the line, to give a very clear, to be stubborn about it, and to give a very clear message that could not be interpreted in two ways about the point that you're trying to make. Now, if as call ourselves leaders, people, whatever it is, and by the way, what makes people leaders is those attributes. If we're not going to give, as members of society, as members of Klal Yisrael, we're not going to give that message clear and undisputed clarity, it means that we are ineffective in our job, and I'm going to tell you even more so, also, we make an avera, we are choteh, we make a sin, first of all, for the other person that is doing that, because if I saw something that is wrong, and if I care about you, I should tell you, listen, you're doing this wrong. You're not doing this right. If, for example, I see you doing something wrong, let's say like changing your tire wrong, right? You expect me to tell you, listen, you're doing it wrong. I am not a lawyer, but even the laws of what they call a good Samaritan. A good Samaritan is not what people will think. A good Samaritan usually is a bad Samaritan, but we'll use that expression. Even that, you can blame a person, certain things, but there are cases that not doing what you're supposed to be doing is considered to be something that you could be persecuted. If you could have helped and you didn't help, it's something that you could be persecuted. Even more so as a leader, and you see it today in this whole, and I'm not getting into politics, in this whole dispute that they have today regarding the events of January 6th. Do you expect from a president to sit down in his office and do nothing? Or you expect the president to stand up, even if he lost, to say to the people, guys, that's not the way to do it. So that's something expected from us to do. Al ta'amod al dam re'echa. Al ta'amod al dam re'echa means don't make the other person sin or fail, and you're going to rejoice on his side. You choose not to do anything. And this lesson comes exactly, this situation comes exactly in front of Moshe Rabbeinu, and I'm talking about few weeks before his death, when 2.5 tribes of Am Yisrael stood in front of him and they asked, say, please, we don't want to enter the land, we want to stay east of Jordan. In case you don't know, that's the area of Jordan and part of southern Syria, including Ramat HaGolan. For all those who needs a short, brief historical review, we were there beforehand. By the way, I'll take this opportunity to tell you that the whole utilization of the concept, the West Bank, was made up by the British because that area was called Transjordan, and they didn't want from the very beginning to have any claim of the Jews to that part of the land, so therefore they call it Transjordan. Instead of calling Transjordan, they changed it to the West Bank. Just to let you know. And Moshe does not hesitate, and right away he starts rebuking them, and it's very tough. He talks to them in a very tough manner, and he blames them for being weak, being cowards, that at the time of war, they are basically breaking the morale of the people. They are like, in a way, like a fifth column. You're breaking the morale of the people. I'll give you an example. During the Vietnam War, what made America lose that war was not the Vietnamese, was not the Chinese, was the American people from within. They broke the morale of the people. Moshe is blaming them for doing the same thing. And what's more perplexing about Moshe Rabbeinu, he is doing so even before he heard the reason why they want to do it. He goes, boom, right away. He doesn't wait. So the Baal HaKedah, Rabbi Yitzchak Arama, you guys forget, says and explains that Moshe Rabbeinu, in regards to Moshe Rabbeinu and his leadership capabilities, understood that such a strange request of living on the eastern side of the Jordan River, there could be only two reasons to do it. He understood. He saw the underlying reason for their requests. And he says either it is a fear from an armed struggle, from war, they were cowards, or an absolute act of heresy that puts a doubt in the holiness of Am Yisrael, and saying, of Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel, and saying, well, Eretz Yisrael is not so holy, what difference does it make? I'll stay here, I don't need to go there. And they, by doing so, not really validating the fact that we are allowed to sit in the land. Of course, that's something that we all, not you, we all have to take into our hearts and understand and pay attention when we say we don't want to live in Israel, and then you give a reason why. take this very much into your account. So Moshe Rabbeinu chose to use this tochecha in a very lenient way, in a certain way, and he calls it morach lev she'eno b'mkomo. Right? He could have said, instead of saying that, he could have said, could be like a very nice leader, right? And to just give him a pass and to say, okay, fine, not a problem. You want to stay there? No, as long as you're part of Am Yisrael, you're part of the community, that's okay, right? You shouldn't really care. There's a lot of, you would say there's a lot of, it makes a lot of sense. It's a great area. They're a great grazing area over there. And by the way, that's probably a proof to show you that climate change is an old thing, because if you look today at Jordan, that side, when Am Yisrael was, there's nothing to graze. It's just a desert. But yet at the time there was a great grazing field. So here we go in terms of that. But it's a different case. And that's going to make real estate much more manageable. And not everybody wants to live in Tel Aviv and so on and so forth. But he could have done this. But he understood, Moshe Rabbeinu understood, that if he's not going to prove them wrong, and if he's not going to rebuke them appropriately, he's going to actually do wrong to his job and his duty and his title as the leader of the Jewish nation. A leader cannot do that, Ephraim. You just can't do that. And not only against his title, he's also going to sin against the task that was actually given to him to lead Am Yisrael to the promised land. If not all the Jews entering Am Yisrael, he would fail. It would be a failure. Now, if, for example, here, take this. Hold on a second. If, for example, you have a job to protect your land from an invader, and you're able to ward off the invader, but not completely. The invader took 20% of your land. You failed. I don't care that you protected 80%, but you failed. Moshe Rabbeinu sees it the same way. Moshe Rabbeinu says, no, you all have to come in. And by the way, when you look at the Rambam and his definition of what Mashiach is all about, is that he's going to force all Am Yisrael to do the right thing, to come to the land. So, and the reason is because in the land of Israel, Am Yisrael is really going to be, that's the only place that Am Yisrael would be fully able to execute his spiritual work or his spiritual duty among the nations. That's the only place you're able to do it. Can't do it anywhere else. And if he's not going to do so, not only is going to betray his title, not only is going to betray his job, he's going to do wrong for the Jewish people themselves, because he's going to be the facilitator of the failure to do what they need to do. So you think about it next time you tell me you don't want to go to Israel because of, you think about your contribution in the failure of Am Yisrael doing what they need to be doing. Okay? It's not so simple. Now, imagine everybody says, oh wow, it's so nice in New York, let me just move to New York also. Why do I need to stay here? And people would leave. They would leave Israel, then the place will be empty. But more than that, he's going to also do wrong by the 2.5 tribes that he was the facilitator. He was the cause to leave them in the level that they were at, being mediocre at best. And by doing so, dropping them, he is removing his obligation from them. He needs to be responsible for them as well. They are a part of Am Yisrael. He needs to be responsible for them as well. And I'm sure these are things that we didn't think about so far throughout the years, but it's something we need to think about. So he gives him a tremendous rebuke. It's very long, very tough, cannot be interpreted in two different ways. But with that, he also able to combine a little bit of humbleness and consideration, and together with that, to be done them lekav zchut. So we also, as people, as managers, as leaders, and so on and so forth, we need to understand, for example, if a particular, let's say, worker that works for us, or a particular person in our society, or in our environment, the community, whether it's shul, neighborhood, and so on and so forth, is acting inappropriately because simply, he didn't pay. He starts slacking, and he didn't pay attention. So we need to pay. He's not so careful about it. We need to hold him and pull him to the side and says, listen, buddy, pull yourself together. You're not doing right. Because if, for example, you come to shul and you are not really so respectful for shul, and you start talking, and you start, talking to your neighbor next door, and you don't pay attention, the rabbi is talking, you're looking at your watch, or you're looking at your clock, or you're looking at your clock, watch, the same thing, or looking at your telephone, and so on and so forth. It's contagious. You can say, listen, nicely. Don't yell at anybody. Nicely. We need to call him. We need to call him to order. If you have a co-worker that you are working hard, you're working the way, and working hard, that's the only way you should be working, because you're getting paid for it. If your boss will come and tell you, listen, I don't need you to do anything, just sit here and collect the check, I hear you. But your boss is paying you to work, and working hard is what you expected to do. And if your co-worker is not working hard, so means that he's not considering it seriously, and it's going to affect everybody. So you need to take him to the side. And the same thing again, if it's a company, so therefore not paying attention or not caring so much on the goals and the objectives as your company, as your workplace, as your society, as your community, and so on and so forth. If you see, let's say, for example, you're one of your workers who is not giving the appropriate attention or attitude to a worker, to a co-worker, or to a customer, or a member in the shul to another member of the shul, or to a guest that comes here. I told you this many times. If somebody sits in your seat in shul, instead of telling him, excuse me, it's my seat, or you're putting your siddur and kind of pushing him to the side so they would move, take it as a compliment. Take it as a compliment. Say, oh my goodness, Baruch Hashem, I was zochet to daven so nicely. Out of the whole entire shul, this person just chose to, I guess I generated some good energy. Baruch Hashem. Go somewhere else. Be metak in this place also. So if somebody doesn't respect, if you see the gabayim, if you have gabayim in shul, that choose to ignore a certain person. Why? Because he doesn't give so much money. Say to them, excuse me, this is wrong. Give him an aliyah also. Don't be afraid of saying the truth. Say it nicely, but say it. Otherwise, you're just as guilty. You are just as guilty. And even if it's somebody that betrays the values of our society, you need to say something. You can't excuse it because of social, economic stature, race, sex, or anything else like this. There's no excuse for that. We are all members of society. We all need to contribute. Now, it could be a larger society of a city, a state, a country, a smaller society as, a shul, community, family, and even yourself. However, there are times in which, we say always, have mekabel kol adam besever panim yafot. Always have to be nice. You have to be nice to people. But there are times that you are not allowed to be nice, but you need to do a so-called the dirty job. You need to tell the person the truth. But even that, when you do that, you have to do so in the most civilized, humble, and gentle way. When you yell at people, people don't hear you. Tell them the word slowly, divrei chachamim, benachat nishmaim. And at the end, it's going to benefit everybody. It's going to benefit us, it's going to benefit our co-workers, our member of society, and so on and so forth. So Bnei Israel are getting closer to Eretz Israel. And they are about to build a society which was a complete new type of society, never before in the history of humankind. It is a free society that is established on a covenant between man and God. And what we call Shilton HaChok will be the law and order, is going to be kept in this society, not by force, but the power of the loyalty of the people to the moral obligation in which they all accepted upon themselves. Believe it or not, it still exists today. Go to Bnei Brak, there's no police station in Bnei Brak. Okay? In such a society, which is a society of a covenant, words become holy. In ancient societies, you give somebody your word that was worth as gold. La palabra, my word. When we were kids, we used to say to somebody, you promise something? Say yes. Milah shel gever, a word of a man? Say yes, that was it. It was okay. Milah shel gever, I expect you as a man not to go back on your words. You promised me? Stay loyal to your words. So what's the big deal about words? And why is Moshe choosing that? In our society, the Jewish society, words are holy. And the principle of holiness of words is basically the centerpiece of Judaism. Vayedaber Hashem el Moshe. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu spoke to us in Har Sinai, Now we need to know that kind of society has what we call collective freedom. Everybody's free. And in that kind of society, we don't need a constitution. In Israel, the Israelis are very, mesmerized by the concept of the American Constitution. We should have a constitution. I'm sorry. If you ask me, I'm going to tell you this. The state of Israel does not need a constitution because we already have one. We have a constitution. If you ask me again why I don't celebrate Yom Ha'atzmaut, because I say, who told you I don't? I do, just on a different day. My Yom Ha'atzmaut I celebrate in Pesach. That's Yom Ha'atzmaut, so we became free then. That's my Yom. I do celebrate Yom Ha'atzmaut. Do you say Hallel Yom Ha'atzmaut? Of course I say Hallel Shalem with the bracha in Pesach. I didn't do it, huh?
At night.
At night, and in the day. I do. I have it right, you have it wrong. And that is the constitution that we have, is the written word, is the Torah. And that Torah, that constitution is freedom. Says Rabbi Yonatan Sachs alav shalom, that every society needs rules. Without rules, and that's what we have today, we're going to have an anarchy. Without rules, we're going to have anarchy. I don't know if you noticed, I think I'm maybe one of the few people who stops at a red light lately. It doesn't make a difference. I mean, today people don't wear helmets anymore. And it's crazy what's going on. We are falling into a state of anarchy. People obey the laws from three reasons. The first one, they're afraid of punishment. So there's no punishment. They go on bail, forget bail, we don't need bail, there's no punishment, so therefore they violate the laws, right? So they're afraid of punishment. In a society that is established on power, that is the only or the main reason for people to obey the laws. Right? The second reason is that it's appropriate to keep the law, says Rabbi Sachs, is that is a symbolism of a society that based on self-benefit. What do I get out of it? What have you done for me lately, baby? Right? It's good for me to do so, so I'll do it, right? So, in these two reasons that we just said, of course, there's a lot of missing things. There's a lot of chesronot in that. Because power will corrupt you. Remember, power will corrupt you. That's why our greatest leaders did not want power, because they were afraid to be corrupted by power. It blinds you. So sometimes asking your own benefit and so on and so forth, when it happens that people worry about themselves and they stop worrying about others. And we see it today all the time. Those people who are successful, they flourish, and the other people suffer. That's how we get caste system by us. And today, more and more, everybody's talking about they are the very mega rich, and most of the people are poor. There's no middle ground anymore. And that's exactly what happens to us today. Justice and compassion move away to the sides for greed and abuse. And again, this is our society. However, it comes the Torah and gives a totally different way. Comes the Torah, it says, another reason to keep the law is people obey the law sometimes because they decided to do so from their own free will. They want to. I want to keep the law. I, for example, stop at a stop sign, even if it's 3 o'clock in the morning, in the middle of Kansas, nowhere around me. There's a stop sign, I'll reach a full stop, and I'm telling you, it's no joke. I reach a full stop, I would stop, I'll count 3 seconds, and I'll go. I never glide through it. That's what it is. Why? Because I want to. There's nobody around me. But I want to do it, and I'm doing it. And by the way, one time when we were in the old place, and that's what I do, I always stop. So a policeman didn't see me. All of a sudden I go, woo, goes the siren. He said to me, license, registration, and so on and so forth. I said, okay. He said to me, why'd you run a stop sign? I said, no, I didn't. He said to me, you did. I said, no, I didn't. I didn't run a stop sign. I always stop. I count 3 seconds. And that's what I do all the time. I did not do it. He said to me, you sure? I said, absolutely. I said to him, I have 20 guys waiting for me downstairs. Go over there, I'll wait for you outside. Ask him if the rabbi stops on a stop sign or not. He said to me, okay, go. That's what I do. And that's what makes obeying the law completely different. And this is what happens when people obey the law because they want to. That what happens to us, that can only happen in a society that is not based on fear, power, and intimidation. That's something that can happen only in a society that is not a selfish society that only does what's good for me but not good for others. That only can come in a society that has a voluntary moral duty to do things. And that's what happens with us, with Am Yisrael. The Torah, the whole concept of Naaseh v'Nishma is that. So the Torah basically is a journey of Am Yisrael, not only through the desert, but to call it a radical idea and unique idea, and what Rabbi Sachs calls the politics of covenant. Not the politics of power. HaKadosh Baruch Hu used words to create the world, our natural world. He used words, and we use words to create a different world, which is a societal world. That's how we become partners with HaKadosh Baruch Hu in creation. The Torah tells us that our words create, because words are holy. Again, words are holy. only people. In other words, because words obligate you. And when words obligate you, they create trust. And trust to society is what laws of nature is to nature. Okay? In other words, they are the basis for order. The opposite of chaos. That's why we need to understand that obligation, when a person accepts himself obligation, is the first step of making yourself holy. You cannot become holy when you live in a chaos. When you strive chaos, you have to have order in your life. And to have order in your life, you have to obligate yourself to keep the order because you want to. That's why it's important to get up in the morning every single day to come to be kovea itim la Torah. We cannot become a goy kadosh, a holy nation, if we are not kovea itim la Torah. I'm obligating myself to do so every single day. Then I'll get holy. Then my house will get holy. My mind will be holy. I will be holy, and everything around me will be holy. Through chaos is just the opposite. And in our society, the whole effort of society is to create chaos by putting all the impure things into your mind. That's how you lose control. That's how you destroy society. You don't believe what I'm telling you? Go look at Rome. Rome fell because of chaos. Any other society that fell because of chaos and lack of morality, when the words became nothing, empty. When your words have no meaning behind them, don't carry any weight, you're no more than a bird singing in the sky. As a matter of fact, that's probably better because it's pleasant to your ears. That's why if trust is being broken, societal relationship fall apart, and then as a result of that, society becomes completely dependent by law enforcement mechanism and other power or forces that are being used to enforce you. It's called how do we call it? Law enforcement. You don't need to force me to keep the law. I want to keep it. It's a totally different attitude. And when usage of power is common, well, society is not free anymore. That's the danger, I guess, of having a big government. When government control all aspects of your life, you become not free. We don't need government to regulate if we all assume responsibility. I don't need to have laws of recycle. If you don't do it, I'll give you a penalty, because I understand that recycle is important. And so on and so forth. I understand that I should not be driving fast, but because I'm driving fast, there's going to be enforcement for that. I get a ticket. They're going to reduce the speed, because all of a sudden they realize, hey, he makes a lot of money. 24/7 our cameras in New York, guys. 24/7. We started to protect the people around schools. Now it's everywhere, 24/7. Agreed. We failed, and it's on us. The politicians are the fault, but it's on us because we failed to be responsible, to drive like normal people, and to rebuke people who drive recklessly. Look what's going on in Israel. Every day, people get killed by cars. It's crazy. This week, I think 20 people died because of car accidents. It's just out of their minds. Reckless. You see the light flashing. Stop. Don't run to the light. Stop. Nothing will happen. A free society is dependent on trust. And a trust is dependent on fulfilling your obligations. And this way, that's people, what we call Darkei Hashem, people walking Darkei Hashem, that created language to create a reality. And words create an obligation. An obligation is a moral obligation that is kept because of trust and because of responsibility. That creates an opportunity to become free. So if you want to become free, start taking responsibility for your actions. Don't wait for somebody, because I forgot who said it. How did they say it? You can't look for freedom when it's in somebody's hands or something like this. You can't ask for freedom. Yeah, it's in Civil War, thing, the song Civil War, yeah. You can't ask for freedom when it's inside. In other words, the way to become free is to first of all become responsible. And if you become responsible, he becomes responsible, I become responsible, we're all free. We don't need the law to tell us what to do. So we're free. And if society is a society that is not a free society, you know that the people there acting in chaos. There's a chaos going there. And chaos starts from family structure. Having a structure in the family. When everybody knows what they're doing. And that is another thing that I'm going to tell you now. So therefore, we need to understand that if you said you'll do something, you'll do it. You stay committed to your words. If you're not going to guard what you're saying, at the end is that you're going to lose your freedom.
But this is why when the Chachamim made Gezerah, they saw if people could keep it or not. And when they couldn't, they removed it because they realized that it would take away their ability to...
Not only, yes, it's a great question. Ari is saying like this. When Chachamim made a Gezerah, a decree, and they saw the people cannot fulfill it, they removed the Gezerah, they removed the decree. Why? Make the people. Because when I'm going to violate it, and he's going to violate it, all of a sudden we're creating a chaos. And we create a chaos, we deteriorate our society. So better off remove the Gezerah than deteriorate the society. However, that's the Gezerah that the rabbis made, not something that the Torah tells us not to do. What the Torah tells us not to do are the boundaries of operating freely between the two boundaries, between the two lines. Aseh velo taseh. What to do, what not to do. What should I, engage and strive for, and what should I disengage and not come near. It's not to restrict you. It's to give you freedom. And that's why Chachamim tell us. En ben chorim ela mi she'osek b'Torah. If you learn Torah. You learn Torah. Why? Because if you learn Torah, we assume that you're going to act differently. We assume that you understand the responsibility. And then you become free. Because you're kovea. You come every day. So I don't understand these people who don't come to learn in Yeshiva all the time. I really don't. And then they're going to tell me they feel oppressed by the laws of the Torah, and they throw it out behind the back. And then what happens? They become more oppressed. The Gemara is full of examples. The Gemara says, "She'osim retzono shel makom," when Bnei Israel do what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants from them, their job is being done by others. You're free. But when you don't listen to what God tells you, you have to do other people's job. You don't have time. You're busy. That's exactly what it is. And, it happens that many times the people who, let's say, for example, start a company or started a community or started a shul, started an organization and so on and so forth, and sometimes even parents are able to function as, call it the CEOs and so on and so forth, especially when they so-called jump into the field and they get themselves going. However, in that field, we need to understand that we need to have a separation between emotion, right, to the workers that work together with you, a part of that, right? So, for example, the demands of the company have changed, right? Or demands of the shul have changed. Just as a person needs to act like a father when he has children, and he has to start acting like a baby. You have to become mature to act like a father. You have to fit your role. It's not that you don't want to play around. It's not that you don't want to do certain things, but now when you have to give an example, you have an obligation. So you need to separate. So as your workers, when you're a leader, sometimes you need to step out. Yes, you want to hang around with your people, and the Chachamim tells us also, don't sit with the me'aratzot and eat with them, because you're going to become ineffective. They're going to think your buddies is ineffective. I'm not saying be arrogant. I'm not saying being aloof. But what I'm saying to you, you have a job to fill and you have to live up to your job. So sometimes this transformation needs to come also with the ability to give tochacha, to give rebuke and guidance. And not everybody wants to hear it. And sometimes you see parents that don't want to give tochecha to the kids, and they don't want to be responsible for the kids, and they let the kids do whatever they want. And before you know, they lost the kid. They lost them. Or your congregates, or anything else. Listen, it's always easy to be in a place of kissing up and making everybody happy, that demands less of a confrontation and standing your ground and so on and so forth. Make everybody happy. I know I make everybody happy. You want to hear a chumrah, I give you a chumrah. You want to hear a kula, I'm trying to make everybody happy. But as I sent you today, some of you, I sent you a very nice, let me just see it here. I want to show you. I sent it to some of you guys, if I find it. All right. I have this thing that I found. It's this guy that is riding on a motorcycle. Can you see it over there? He's riding a motorcycle. Can you see it? Right? And what it says there is something very interesting. It says, you see a guy riding somewhere on a desert with a motorcycle. It says, not everyone will understand your journey. That's okay. You are here to live your life, not to make everybody understand. That's first of all. You need to understand that. You need to be able to live your life. You need to be able to stand on what is. It's not about you making everybody happy. You can't. If there are 8 billion people in the world, there are at least minimum of 8 billion ways to make people happy. Everybody's something else. Forget about if you have a couple of Jews there, you already multiplied it by I don't know, tenfold. You can't. Start with God. Start with yourself. Get to know yourself. Do you know who you are? If I'm going to ask you who you are, most of you are going to tell you what you like and what you don't like, but you're going to tell me who you are, what you're about. What's your role? And then you fail. And we fail, and that's not good. And so is in Yalo B'tochecha. It needs to be said. Look, Eliyahu, when told Bnei Israel in the Gilgal, he told them, "Ad matai atem poschim b'shnei haseifim." It's enough already with your games. Enough already. You decide. You want to be God-fearing people, or you want to be idol worshippers? What do you want? Just take your pick already. It's enough. Of course, most Kiruv people will tell you, "Come on, Eliyahu, what's wrong with you, man? They're doing something. They didn't throw anything out. It's okay. Slowly, they'll come out to it." There's no such thing as slowly. Why when a person does an Averah, it's like all the way, right away. It's like, okay, let me get used to this a little bit, They do it right away. Why when it comes to Kedusha? Listen, Rabbi, I'm not ready there. I'm not there yet. I can commit myself. Shabbat is too much for me. Blah, blah, blah. Stories. Why? And we need to understand. We need to stand the ground and say it clearly. Now, I'm going to finish with this, with a quote that, again, I sent some of you by Eli Wiesel. And he says the following: we must take sides. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented. If you see something wrong, you have to say it. Say it nicely, but you have to say it. If you don't say it, you're just as guilty, and maybe even more. They attribute that to Nelson Mandela, but I'm not sure he said that. And correct me, forgive me if I'm wrong. He said something which is, again, I guess it's something like, would the fools multiply when the wise men are silenced? So if there are a lot of fools around us, it's because we keep our mouth shut too long. Speak up. speak up, lead people to the place that they should be, lead them to the place that they deserve, expect them and believe in their ability to grow and believe in the ability of the people to do the right thing. But hold yourself accountable as well. Shabbat Shalom.